How many pairs of jeans have you owned in the last 10 years? How many blouses or button down shirts have you bought but rarely worn? This endless cycle of buying and eventually discarding clothes is all too common for many Americans. It's easy to get sucked into the cheap deals and flashy marketing that highlight the latest trends in fashion. However, it's important to remember that this hyper-consumerism comes at a high cost to workers and the environment. It can also feel exhausting to keep buying clothes that degrade quickly, fit poorly, and aren't comfortable. Because of this, many people end up donating items to places like Salvation Army or Goodwill, thinking that their bags of stuff will find a new home. Unfortunately, that's rarely the case.
Or if we give it away, it may end up being purchased, but only about 8% of the clothing that is donated actually gets purchased domestically, and over half will end up being exported to places like Ghana, where it may or may not be purchased. 40% of the garments that are sent to one of the places that I visited, Kantamanto Market, the second-hand clothing market, actually doesn't get purchased at all, and in the waste stream of places like Ghana, where it either goes into a landfill or ends up being burned.
That's Maxine Beyda, the founder of the nonprofit The New Standard Institute, that aims to make fashion more sustainable and ethical. Much of her work is focused on spreading awareness of the massive toll of fast fashion. She says there's a reason the price on the tag is so low.
So it's happening in these places where we've, exported production, whether that's China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia. These are the kind of emerging places to do production, and it's because it's the cheapest places. And it is cheapest because the labor protections and environmental protections are the lowest. So it's created this kind of race to the bottom, and the fashion industry really represents this global race to the bottom, I think, best out of all of the industries. That's where you're seeing it. We used to, in the 1960s, 95% of what Americans wore was American made. And today that is less than 2%.
Today, a single piece of clothing can traverse across several countries during the manufacturing process. The fabric can come from a province in China and then get shipped to Bangladesh to be cut, hemmed, dyed, and bleached before making its way to the States. Many garment workers in these regions have few rights and are forced to work long hours with little pay in dangerous conditions. And this unfair treatment happens across the industry at every step of the cycle, from production to the eventual waste management of now discarded clothes. Look around these developing countries, and much of the land is polluted with dyes, chemicals, and other toxins leaking from warehouses and landfills piled high with clothes.
The rivers in these production places are varying degrees of black and acrid. And that's because the chemicals that are being used to dye and finish the materials are not being processed, and they're ending up directly in the rivers and oceans of the places where the production is happening.
Today, Beyda says the apparel industry alone makes up anywhere from 4 to 8% of all greenhouse gas emissions. There's room to improve this number, and it begins with reducing the amount of cheap clothes produced each year. Yet businesses will keep churning out inventory if there's demand. It's ultimately up to consumers to rethink what and how often they buy.
Operating sustainably and purchasing sustainably can be done at any price point. And it's really about taking back ownership away from, all of those messages being bombarded at us and thrown at us, to having real ownership over our wardrobe and our style, an invitation to really love our clothes. If we actually love the things that we do buy, we're going to end up wearing them more. And that, beyond all of the marketing claims about sustainable fashion, that is what's going to drive the reduction of impact the most, is just wearing our clothing more than we are today.
Beyda says that there is a shift happening amongst younger generations who are more aware of the environmental and labor consequences of fast fashion. But some big name brands have tried to skew the narrative instead of addressing the issue itself.
I've seen trend presentations from a clothing company, and they'll say oh, the trend this season is leopard print and stripes and sustainable. And if it's a trend, that's kind of the antithesis of what needs to happen in order to address these major environmental and social issues that we've discussed. And so what I think, what we need to do, and this is really the work of my day job at the New Standard Institute, is move to a place where the talk is actually matching up to measurable progress. And this isn't rocket science. It's about doing things like working with suppliers, with textile mills to improve energy efficiency and move to green energy.
The next time you're shopping, look at the manufacturing details. Where was the item made? Does the price factor in the cost of the material, the labor, the shipping? If the cost seems too good to be true, it probably is. Also, ask yourself, is this an item that fits into your wardrobe long term? Or is it a trend piece that you saw an ad for?
It's so often framed as like this is what consumers are demanding, which does not take into account just the amount of advertising and messaging of consumption that is being thrown at us. I think just one statistic from the book that 50 years ago, people were exposed to about 500 ads a day. Today, that's more than 10,000. So we're just being bombarded with messages, and of course social media is just exacerbating these messages to buy. And I got to speak to psychology researchers on the impact of all of this, and it's really devastating. It's having a major, psychological impact on mostly women and mostly young women. And so I think we have to, reconsider what is the goal of all of this? Is it making us happy? And if it's not, how can we change the system?
When you do, in fact, buy pieces that you need, Beyda says do your homework on the brand. Are they using sustainable practices? Where are their clothes made? Do they pay their workers a living wage? And finally, instead of buying new, try to search for a local second-hand shop that you can visit rather than heading to H&M or Old Navy. All of this information can be overwhelming, but there are important questions you should be asking before buying clothing. In the end, you'll love your closet even more because there's a use for each piece hanging in there. To find out more about our guest, Maxine Beyda, visit viewpointsradio.org. Also, check out her new book, Unraveled: The Life and Death of a Garment, available online and in bookstores now. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri, studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
COVID-19 vaccines are rolling out, and many Americans are looking forward to getting back to normal. However, chronic stress of the past year can impact memory, mood, and anxiety. So during June, Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month, the Alzheimer's Association reminds you to make brain health a priority. Beth Kallmeyer, Vice President of Care and Support for the Alzheimer's Association, has tips to restore mental well-being.
First, think about recommitting to brain-healthy basics, like regular exercise, a heart-healthy diet, and getting plenty of sleep. Try to unplug from technology every night. Do what you can to manage your own stress, especially if you're a caregiver for a person living with Alzheimer's or dementia. And return to normal at your own pace by taking small steps and setting boundaries.
Kallmeyer says it also helps the brain to help others by volunteering in your community. For example, by supporting the Alzheimer's Association's The Longest Day event, June 20th. Find out more about Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month at alz.org.
Chuck E. Cheese needs you. They're hiring 5,000 employees nationwide this summer. As a work today, get paid tomorrow employer, Chuck E. Cheese gives its employees the ability to access up to $500 of their earned wages instantly after their first week of employment. Matt Daniel, Senior Entertainment Manager for CEC Entertainment, says it's a great place to start a meaningful career.
80% of current Chuck E. Cheese restaurant managers grew up in the company. I began as a game room attendant. It's a fun place to work, a second family, and a great career. Chuck E. Cheese also offers an incredible referral bonus of $1,500 for certain positions.
Other benefits for eligible employees include medical, dental, scholarships, discounts, and 401k savings plans. Find out more at chuckejobs.com. That's chuckejobs.com, or text CHEESE to 58046 for a complete listing of open positions. Message and data rates may apply.
Men with an enlarged prostate, also known as BPH, often experience urinary symptoms that significantly impact their quality of life. In a recent survey sponsored by Teleflex, nearly half of men with urinary symptoms said their urgent and frequent need to urinate makes them avoid activities they enjoy. 70% said their daytime energy level is impacted by having to urinate frequently at night. Dr. Greg Ewer of Urology of Virginia.
More than 65% of men with BPH in this survey have tried medication for it, but nearly a quarter say it didn't help reduce their need to plan their next bathroom trip. Fortunately, there's a proven option for BPH called the UroLift system that can provide rapid symptom relief while preserving sexual function and can be performed in a doctor's office.
Most side effects are mild to moderate. Serious bleeding and infection events are rare. Results may vary. Dr. Ura is a paid consultant of Teleflex. Visit urolift.com today for a urologist near you and see if the UroLift system procedure is right for you.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints. Coming up next week.
Why should it be the case that somebody who earns $50,000 and has to work hard for it should pay taxes, but somebody who's given $50,000 or $50 million pays no taxes on it?
The policies that are only furthering the great wealth imbalance. Then,
we really don't value this job, even though it is so important to families and with our aging population.
The caregiver crisis in the U.S. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.